Hi, Chuck and I are going to show you how to build this very nice airplane. It's called the Jupiter Junior. This is a modification of an original German design that was designed to be built with what they call Depron, and we think that that's the main product in Europe. But in America we use something called Dollar Tree foam because it's cheap. But it is made out of two types of material. This is the Depron, the tail is the Depron, and this is insulation foam. It's 19 millimeters thick, 3/4 of an inch. And the rest is just a couple of wires, the wheels, and the electronics. It's very simple to build. We're going to show you how to do that. We'll show you how to get prepared, and it's very simple to fly. That's the most important thing. And on top of that, if you have an accident, it probably won't get damaged, and it's very easy to repair if you need it. So this is the ideal first airplane. Before we start to build, we've got to have the materials, and as I said, this will be the wing and the tail surfaces. This is 6 millimeter. In your case it will be Depron. You will have the patterns to do this. We just draw the patterns on this sheet and cut them out with a razor blade or a hobby knife or on a saw if that's easier for you. We usually use this knife. Okay, what you're looking at now is the body of the airplane. We call it the fuselage. This is the pattern now drawn on 25 millimeter, not 19 millimeter, 25 millimeter insulation foam. We will cut this out on the bandsaw. We'll show you later how to do that. Okay, I'm going to start cutting this out on the bandsaw. We're going to do this free form. It's the best way to do it. Okay, now, next part. Okay, before we go any further, since we have the fuselage here, I'm going to show you an important component, how to put that on. It's called the firewall. This is the thing you're going to mount your electric motor on. Now the firewall will have several holes depending on the motor you use, but it has to have at least these 4 holes on the edges. The reason is that we're going to put in this stick, 4 of them, to push them into the body here to hold it to the airplane so it doesn't get ripped out very easily if you have a crash. So what you do is you put some epoxy on the firewall, place that on the front, then you put some epoxy on the stick, and your sticks will be the exact length you want, about 25 millimeters, and you're going to push this epoxied stick right into the body of the plane. 4 of them, one there, one on the other side, one on the bottom, one over on the bottom on the other side. So you're going to have these 4 sticks and the glue behind the 3 millimeter plywood being held to the. Now I want to show you a couple of things that you're going to have to be careful with when finishing the fuselage, getting it ready to put together with the other pieces. I want to point your attention to the tail, the back of the airplane. When we cut out the pattern showed this slot here. This is relatively easy to cut on the saw. It's just for the what we call the stabilizer. That's pretty easy because everything is flat. The thing that's difficult is this slot and this slot. It usually gets cut in one cut on the bandsaw, and it goes through this way till the end and this way, but you have to keep it steady and straight because this is where the vertical fin goes, the rudder part, and this is where the tail skid goes. Okay, so that is a little bit difficult. You have to make sure you hold everything square. As you see, it should be cut out exactly in the middle, and this also exactly in the middle for the 6 millimeter Depron. The other thing that you have to do at this point at the fuselage is to cut this slot out that was also on the pattern. So this is easy to cut. You need this cut for the landing gear holding block. So once that's done and the nose piece is on, everything in the fuselage is ready. Okay, let me show you exactly what it would look like when you're done. If you cut these slots out carefully, we have the stabilizer that will go in here. This is where it's going to go. It's going to be centered properly. We have the rudder will go on top. Okay. And the skid, the tail skid, will go down here. Okay? So those are the three pieces that need to be all at 90 degrees to each other. So you have to be a little bit careful. Okay, before we go any further, we want to show you how to do this wing work if you don't have the fancy jig that Chuck built. Remember we showed you the pattern before of the step rod, the 6mm, or you probably get away with 5mm. But these are the patterns. This is the top wing, this is the bottom wing. Now the wings have to have a curve in them for the airfoil. And Chuck is going to show you how to put the curve into one of the wing panels. You have to do this 4 times, but Chuck is going to show you how to do it to one of them. So Chuck, do you want to start? Now this is a 5cm plastic pipe that we use as a pattern. And you can see Chuck is holding it very tightly against that, and he's rubbing it with his hand to get heat into the depron so it bends nicely. We don't have to have such a sharp curve, but the memory of doing this will give us enough of a curve to stay on the surface of the body that we need. So as you can see, it goes almost all the way around, and you just have to squeeze very hard, not just at the bottom, but all along the wing to get it warmed up. And that's it. Now you see you have a very nice curve. We're not going to have the full curve in the final wing, but this is what we're going to start with. And you have to do that 4 times. Like this. We want to show you how to do this wing work if you don't have the fancy jig that Chuck built. It's a relatively simple thing to do. What we need is essentially 3 pieces. We need a center piece, and we need the 2 supports. That's all we really need. And to make the centerpiece, this is what it will look like. I made one out of foam. We recommend that you make it out of wood, unless you don't worry about chewing it up. And the pattern for that you get out of the fuselage. If you remember, this was the body's pattern. You make another pattern with a line drawn from the very corner here where the wing starts to where the wing ends. You cut a piece exactly like that in that pattern. That's what this is, okay? That's what this is. That's all you need to make. So we can put that down, place the wing at the edge like Chuck did. Make sure you line up the back and the front. This we know is going to overhang because that's what you want to sand off. And you take this block, could be a block of anything, move this back and forth till this distance is about the 7.5 centimeters. Okay? Then you will take your sanding block and you will sand along the edge. It's the same as the jig, it's just not as fancy. And you do the same to the other side. Come here with another block, put it here, and you do the same on this side. So you don't need the jig. What I want to show you now is the landing gear and explain how it's made. You're going to get 3 pieces of 1.5mm plywood. Okay? The first piece is like this. It is exactly the width and the height of this slot. Okay? You can make 2 of those. Okay? We have 2 of those. The tricky part is the middle piece. You're going to take this 1.5mm wire, bend it at about 90 degrees. See? That's about 90 degrees. That wire is going to go in here. The middle 1.5mm piece is going to be cut out like this. It needs space for the wire, okay? And it will get glued in like that and like that around the wire. And then this piece will get glued right on top. And it's all glued with epoxy Now you've got your sandwich, like I had before, 4.5 millimeters, and that sandwich will go into the slot. And again, as I said, the ends have to be bent over for the wheels. Okay. Before we get into the final building technique, we want to explain to you what really has to be done before everything gets put together. Because if you don't do it this way, it's almost impossible to build it. Okay? You basically have to make some holes, some cutouts into it. We need a cutout up here for the receiver. This is just approximate. Your receiver may be a little different in size, but it should be somewhere in this area. You will put an outline on the fuselage and hollow it out with your hobby knife. This should be a 12 millimeter hole right about here. Doesn't have to be exact, but about this place. This will allow you to put the wires through from one side to the other side, to get the speed control wires to come here, to get the servo wire from the other side to come through here and go to the receiver. Okay? This is going to be a cutout that you mark for the elevator servo. It should be exactly made to the size of the servo frame. Cut it out with your hobby knife and place it in there. So it should be a snug fit. You don't even have to glue it in. It should just be a tight fit. Now, on the other side, here's the hole you cut out before, and above the spot for the elevator servo, you're going to do a similar thing for the rudder servo. You're going to mark this and have a cutout. Here's the hole, and this is behind the receiver, which is going to be up here on the other side, is a cutout for the speed control. So those things should all be done first because they're impossible to do when you have the wing on. Okay? Now, another thing that has to be done to prepare the fuselage, after you do all these cutouts, is very important. We have to do a little bit of work on the mounting of the wings. The center of the wing will be right there. Okay? Just like that. Draw a line down the center. And with your hobby knife, you're going to cut in a little bit, maybe about 1 millimeter deep here and up to the top edge here. Just about 1 millimeter deep in the center. Maybe 2 millimeters. And you cut that out with a hobby knife so it's like a little V, like this, in the top. You're going to do a similar thing in the bottom. Draw the line in the center, like that. Just draw it all the way through. Okay? Now this one you don't have to cut. You can do it with sandpaper. We can cut out about 2 millimeters from the edge, but you don't cut out in the middle. So it's going to be tapered down. It's going to be like this on the bottom, because the bottom wing comes up and the top wing goes down into this groove. So you need that prepared before you attach the wings. You should do the bottom wing first. The reason is that the bottom wing is not in the way when you put the top wing on later. You could do it without any help by getting something that holds this perfectly straight at 90 degrees. Okay? To make life easier for yourself, we suggest making a little tool like this. We made it out of our funny foam, but it probably would be easier for you to make it out of cardboard. Very simple cardboard. It's about 6 millimeters thick. Just a bottom plate, these two end plates. This is the thickness of the fuselage. Okay? So the bottom wing, put epoxy on this part here. Mount the wing, center it perfectly. Center the wing. Use some pins to hold this in a little bit tight so it touches all the surfaces of the body. Once that's done and you're relatively sure that it's straight, okay, should line up with the lines, the center of the wing, you put this in here and you use, the epoxy will be holding it on and the pins, you use the ruler to measure that each wingtip is the same distance from the table. 5-minute epoxy on the wing. Put the epoxy down. Put this in here. And you might have to use pins to hold this down to keep the curvature right on this edge. But what you also have to do is measure each wing tip. Make sure that this one is the same as the other one. Okay? Once you've got this wing held on, you will have to put some kind of support maybe under one side to move it up, or the other side, just to make sure that this is even. And this will complete the wing assembly. Okay, now that we've got the wings attached, we're going to talk a little bit about the tail. We showed the elevator before. This how to prepare the elevator. Horizontal tail, the stabilizer which goes in here, and this is the part that moves up and down to make the airplane go up and down. It's called the elevator. What we're going to do is we have to separate this. We have to cut this because we have to prepare the edge. So we cut this at 90 degrees, perfectly straight. Come down here. Okay, it's cut. So, now that it's cut, this side we leave alone, the side that goes in here. That we leave alone. We're going to take this side and we're going to prepare it. But we have to sand it at 45 degrees, so this can move down and up. Okay, 45 degrees, just like that. That's what the edge has to be sanded at. That's what I'm going to do right now. I'm going to take this. We don't sand the top. Yeah, that's pretty good. Okay. Okay, as you can see, it's now, instead of straight, it's now this way. You can see this edge. It will allow this to move down and also move up with the tape. So what we're going to do now is put the tape on. Okay, now if we bend it like it goes up okay, but it's a little tight going down. So now what we'll do is we'll come along here and we'll sand a little bit more. Now that's much better. See how far it goes down? And now it's done. So this part is done. We still have to put the control horn in. You do the same thing with the rudder. The same thing. You cut it and you sand the 45 degrees just like we did here. Or after you've done this, you can do that a little later. You should put the control horns in. We have the pattern for the control horns out of the 1mm plywood. You should make those and insert them where shown on the templates. You cut a little slot in the rudder and the control horn gets glued in there with epoxy. You would do the same thing on the elevator. We show you on the layouts where the slot goes for the control horn for the elevator, which comes out on the bottom. After those things are all done, you basically put in the elevator and carefully put some glue on. You can put the whole airplane in this jig again. Make sure everything is straight. If you did everything right, it should be straight. Glue the elevator in, then you glue the rudder on top, again with your epoxy or the Uhu pour. Make sure this is at 90 degrees, and then you can put the tail skid, glue that in down there. So that will be your whole tail assembly. The wings are on already, and your airplane is ready to have the electronics and the landing gear installed. And then you can put the tail skid, glue that in down there. So that will be your whole tail assembly. The wings are on already, and your airplane is ready to have the electronics and the landing gear installed. That we had the opportunity to show you how to build this fantastic airplane. It is, I think you'll agree, very simple to put together, and I can tell you it is very inexpensive. It's the ideal project for a group of young people, old people, in schools, in clubs, because they all fly perfectly. Chuck has built himself over 30 of these, and they have all flown. Not one has had a problem. And even though we've had accidents, none has been damaged. That's the best part. And the beauty of this design is you can also modify it to the way you would like it to look. We've already changed the design from the original German design. This is the one that we were using as a demonstrator for the video, but Chuck also made a slightly bigger one. And this one is good enough to fly outdoors without a problem, as well as indoors. Remember, the most important thing is the curvature of the wing has to be kept, and the angle at which these wings sit here, that should always be the same, otherwise it will not fly right. You can get your own motor. You can see we have various size motors. We have this bigger motor here, we have a smaller motor in a small plane. It will fly with almost any motor. The batteries, you can fly with something like a 200 milliamp battery to a 900 milliamp battery, or bigger on the big planes. So it could fly for a half hour. It is really the perfect airplane for someone who wants to relax and enjoy flying.